While the dark clouds over Bahrain have been blown away, the global economy and the economies of the Middle East are still huffing and puffing, trying to blow the clouds of an economic slowdown and uncertainty away. Developed economies and emerging ones, commodity exporters and commodity importers, large economies and small, are all concerned about a slowing of economic growth. The International Monetary Fund said in its annual report last month that growth next year is likely to be below that this year. Countries that have been driving growth, including China, are now dealing with the economic and political consequences of decelerating growth. For an Indian like me, it is some consolation that this year, and according to forecasts, even next, we will be the fastest growing large economy in the world. While India has certainly benefited, like many other emerging economies, from low oil prices, it would also be hurt not just by the global economic slowdown, but by any instability in this region caused by excessively low oil prices. The downturn of the commodity supercycle is both a blessing and a curse, and has mixed implications for both commodity exporters and commodity importers. What the global economy needs is stability and greater predictability in oil prices, neither volatility nor a return to a regime of unsustainably high prices. It is against this background of slower growth, lower commodity prices, and fiscal imbalances that we meet here today for the Bahrain Bay Forum, organized by the International Institute of Strategic Studies and sponsored by the Bahrain Economic Development Board. 5 years ago, in the summer of 2010, the IISS and the EDB came together to convene the Bahrain Global Forum. That forum met to discuss the aftermath of what I call the transatlantic financial crisis of 2008-2009, the then emerging debt crisis in Europe, and to understand how this region would be impacted by both. Our focus at that time was on the geopolitics of a global financial crisis. At that time, and amid Western economies battling crises, Bahrain looked eastwards towards Asia, which was, in 2010, still a bright spot. The Bahrain Global Forum concluded that West Asia, or what the West calls Middle East, would henceforth look east to rising Asia. We assumed at that time that the slowdown in the West would be compensated by Asia's rise. That assumption, even though valid, has become wobbly. Addressing the Bahrain Global Forum in 2010, Pascal Lamy, the Director General of the World Trade Organization at that time, warned us that the emergence of regionalism and protectionism in trade would hurt multilateralism and free trade, both for developed and especially for emerging economies. The Trans-Pacific Partnership and the Transatlantic Trade and Investment Partnership were still in their planning stage in 2010, and they have come to now acquire a certain momentum. Lamy warned us that these mega regionals could hurt post-war multilateral trading system. Despite such concerns, the Bahrain Global Forum of 2010 was marked by a sense of optimism. The success of the G20 in addressing the immediate aftermath of the transatlantic crisis gave us hope. Today, however, we meet at a time just days after a G20 summit in Turkey, a geopolitical crisis has broken out. This crisis is yet another symptom of a larger and a more enduring problem in West Asia. We meet here today at a time when geopolitical risk has suddenly gone up, even as we seek to address a range of economic and fiscal challenges. Apart from the turn in the commodity supercycle, we are witnessing a tapering off of factor productivity across a whole range of countries. This decline in productivity has been compounded by a decline both in consumption and investment. All these factors have contributed to a deceleration of world trade. All this could well be driven by cyclical factors. However, our concern is heightened by the fact that several structural shifts in the global economy are adding to these cyclical factors. The global demographic shift, with several developed countries and even China facing the challenge of an aging workforce, the consequent decline in global demand, currency wars, and the worrying pursuit of beggar-thy-neighbor trade policies are creating structural impediments to growth. Can we, at the end of the Bahrain Bay Forum this weekend here in Bahrain, be optimistic about our future? Can we hope to see the G20 become once again an effective board of global economic management? Can we hope that growth will revive in the emerging economies? In BRICS, where I is currently the only bright spot? How large an impediment to growth is geopolitical risk, not just to this region, but to Asia as a whole? Or is there adequate business opportunity despite the political risk, including in this region? These are some of the questions that we seek to address this weekend at the Bahrain Bay Forum. This forum is a culmination of 4 years of sustained focus on the geoeconomics and the geopolitics of the Gulf that the International Institute for Strategic Studies has invested in. After the success of the Bahrain Global Forum in 2010, the IISS launched its Geoeconomics and Strategy program from its Middle East Center here in Bahrain, and I've had the good fortune of launching that program and leading it for the last 4 years. As I step down this weekend, over these past 4 years, I believe we have achieved considerably in bringing focus, global focus, not just to the GCC, but to Bahrain. Our conferences in these 4 years have examined in some detail the nature of the GCC-Asia economic engagement and its geopolitical implications. We convened a conference on what has been termed in the media as currency wars, examining the global status of the US dollar, the euro, and the renminbi. Yet another conference examined the nature of the challenge posed to multilateralism in trade by mega-regional trade blocs. Bridging the areas of IISS expertise, namely geopolitics, defense, military affairs, and geoeconomics, we convened a conference on the impact of rising fiscal stress, both in the developed and developing economies, on defense spending, military modernization, and regional security. More recently, we convened a conference on the strategic implications of organized crime, money laundering, and cybercrime. The important conclusion from much of the research generated by the geoeconomics program is that despite the various political and security challenges that Asia faces, and in particular West Asia faces, the world is passing through an era in which an underlying shift in the center of gravity of the global economy is taking place. That center of gravity is shifting from the Atlantic to the Pacific, its epicenter lying in a region that Prime Minister Shinzo Abe of Japan has defined as the Indo-Pacific. From the Gulf to the Pacific, in this Indo-Pacific region, the economies of Asia continue to rise, even if at lower rates of growth. This shift sometimes decelerates and other times accelerates, responding to both geopolitical and economic shocks. The Asian and transatlantic financial crisis and the European debt crisis were geoeconomic shocks that have contributed to an ongoing geopolitical shift in the balance of power. Against this wider canvas, the IISS Middle East Center here in Bahrain has focused on the opportunities and challenges facing Bahrain, our host country, and our sponsor. Last September, we organized a conference on business opportunity and political risk in the GCC. Today, we meet here at the Bahrain Bay Forum to further examine the geoeconomic environment in which West Asia seeks political stability and economic development. This evening, I have the honor and the pleasure to welcome our guest of honor, His Excellency Mr. Zayed Rashid Al Zayani, Minister of Industry, Commerce and Tourism of the Kingdom of Bahrain. After pursuing his studies in Bahrain and Boston, Mr. Al Zayani has had a distinguished career in business. I have learned from my friends in the Bahrain business community how highly and well regarded he is as a respected business leader and now a minister. It is a mark of the regard he is held in that Mr. Al Zayani was invited to join the government of Bahrain as a Minister for Industry, Commerce and Tourism. We are fortunate to have him here this evening, particularly because he has flown in just for this meeting this evening and is going to fly back to continue his work over the weekend. Your Excellency, we are truly grateful to you for graciously accepting our invitation to be here. I am delighted to present to you an enlightened audience from around the world that is interested in Bahrain's present and wishes to remain invested in Bahrain's future. They eagerly await your message. The podium is yours.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Your Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your very kind welcome. And thank you for the generous remarks. I must say, it's been one of the most flattering introductions I've ever received. It is a pleasure to be here today with you, and I'm delighted that the International Institute for Strategic Studies, together with the EDB, is hosting yet another important event in the Kingdom of Bahrain, particularly after the success of the 11th Manama Dialogue event held in Bahrain just 1 month ago. The government of Bahrain's valued partnership with the Institute is stronger than ever before, and there can be no doubt that these events play a vital role in facilitating multilateral engagements that drives forward security and economic policy solutions. I'd like to begin with a brief assessment of two components of the theme of this event: regional stability and business opportunity. The two components are inextricably linked. History has shown it is extremely rare to possess and maintain security and potential stability without an economic and business environment that delivers opportunities and hope. The two issues go hand in hand. The Middle East's current instability cannot be wholly ascribed to social shortfalls and lack of opportunities. The complexity of the situation is far greater. However, economic disorder and lack of opportunity undoubtedly perpetuates the issue. In order to provide a platform for business to grow and prosper, we must ensure that our country's economies are based on sustainable and solid foundations. This is what the government of Bahrain and our GCC partners have been working towards for decades. The GCC assumed an economic union over 30 years ago, and I believe this united economic front has helped establish the GCC as a mainstay of stability. Our economic allegiance is set to evolve and expand over the coming years, including building stronger links across the Arab world, as highlighted by the signing of the Arab Customs Union earlier this year. The GCC has continually endeavored to diversify our economies away from an over-reliance on our obvious natural resources. Not only was Bahrain the first country in the region to discover oil, but it was also the first to begin diversifying its economy. Coupled with relentless efforts to facilitate and foster private sector activity, which I will come to on, Bahrain now has one of the most diversified economies in the region. With an oil and gas sector that accounts for only 20% of the GDP, down from almost 45% a decade ago. However, we are still not immune from one of the biggest economic challenges facing the Middle East: falling government revenues in the wake of the remarkable decline of the price of oil. This development imposes a necessary requirement on all energy exporting nations to make unprecedented fiscal adjustments, in a similar way that many Western countries were forced to do as a consequence of the financial crisis in 2008. Our current efforts will allow Bahrain not only to effectively respond to this economic shock, but also protect us from future shocks. Our efforts are laying the foundation for a more secure, prosperous future, which will allow everyone to share in its rewards. Let me be clear from the outset. Bahrain's program of reform is not exclusively about reducing expenditure. Our reform is underpinned by the objectives of improving government and improving living standards, using new, innovative techniques to deliver public services and expanding opportunities for our citizens. The government of Bahrain recognizes that our changes must start from within. We have already implemented structural changes to government that will deliver significant savings. Assessing where and how administrative spending can be reduced and redirected to the areas that deliver higher economic returns. These processes are not about diminishing public services, but about streamlining and modernizing approaches to deliver a leaner, more resourceful, more responsive government. It will be the country's citizens that benefit from the virtue of financial prudence. Where non-departmental spending does not need to be addressed, the government puts fairness first. Take, for example, the government's redistribution of subsidies. The redistribution of certain food subsidies will save enough money each year to enable 2 new specialist medical centers to be built. Yet this direction in spending has been achieved without affecting the kingdom's citizens. As I have mentioned, our reforms are based on the principles of improving government and improving living standards, not damaging them. Every step of our coherent and measured reform is based on these principles. We are embarking on a coordinated program which comprises more than just consolidation. It is not simply enough for Bahrain or our GCC partners to say our economies must change and diversify further. We must actively pursue it and create an environment where businesses can flourish. The region as a whole must intensify its efforts to create an even greater culture of competitiveness and entrepreneurship, to drive forward innovation and attract new types of investments. As we have witnessed throughout history, there is no better mechanism for innovation than entrepreneurship. Take Amazon or Google as obvious examples. We recognize that for this to happen, we must deliver targeted investments in 3 main areas: education and training, communications infrastructure, and more broadly, create an environment that encourages entrepreneurship. Bahrain continues to do all 3. As a result of years of investment in education, we now have the most highly skilled national workforce in the Gulf, and we are set to invest over $30 billion in infrastructure projects over the coming years. To put that into context, that is 2/3 of Bahrain's annual GDP, a level of investment unprecedented throughout the world. Bahrain's current growth, which reached 4.5% in 2014, is well above the global average. This year's growth is forecast to reach 3.6%, with strong non-oil sector growth of 4.6%. This growth is driven by a private sector that benefits from Bahrain's zero-tax environment, the lowest business costs in the region, and minimal red tape. In my role as Ministry of Industry, Commerce and Tourism, I repeatedly hear from business leaders and entrepreneurs who attach significant importance to the aforementioned factors. However, the business community is also unequivocal in its view that more can be done, and I agree, we can always do more. We're working hard to harness the kingdom's entrepreneurial spirit. Institutions such as Bahrain Development Bank and Tamkeen provide direct equity or loan capital to entrepreneurs, as well as offering business education and advisory services. Ministry of Commerce and Industry is reforming processes associated with establishing a business within the kingdom to ensure we remove all unnecessary barriers to entry, such as minimum capital requirement, qualifications, and partner approval, and many other prerequisites. We have embarked on an advanced process of instant registration whereby commercial registrations would be issued in minutes. And we are taking the unique step of creating shelf companies, ready-made companies that have fulfilled all requirements for legal registration, which may be bought by entrepreneurs to bypass the registration of incorporation process. These changes, built on the solid foundation of entrepreneurial support and business creation that already exists within Bahrain. Will continue to contribute to our economic development and diversification efforts over the long term. I am no under illusion that economic reform will single-handedly solve the wider instability facing the region. We face long-term socio-religious issues that cannot be solved by short-term military, economic, or political solutions. But we can ensure that economic prosperity, hope, and opportunity play its part. The government of Bahrain is undoubtedly open for business, which I hope I have made clear in the short time I have available. But we are also open to ideas, whether economic or aimed at achieving wider stability within the region. We are in a united battle, not just in the region, but also across the world, against those who wish to stifle prosperity and undermine stability. This conference epitomizes what close collaboration can achieve in order to combat. I look forward to listening and learning from the contributions of distinguished speakers and delegates that will make significant contributions to the debate over the coming days. I welcome you to Bahrain, and thank you for your time, and thank you for listening.
The Minister has agreed to take a few questions before we settle down for dinner. So, yes, my friend Yusuf Mashal. A mic is coming to you.
You are the first Minister of Industry and Commerce that comes from the bottom of the line, that you really worked yourself up in the commerce, in the industry, and you are known to be a businessman, in the real world of a businessman. We are facing an economic problem, and nobody can deny this. Oil prices are down. 92% of the budget of Bahrain is based on oil, and we do not have a proper strategy from the government on how we will be tackling 2016. We have a political problems, we have a security problem, and we do not know what we will be able to do in 2016. A lot of the capital, Bahraini businessmen are transferring their money, and they're moving their money outside of Bahrain because they do not know what is going to happen next year. You, as the Minister of Industry and Commerce, do you have any plans to change Bahrain from a consumable country into a productive country. We are reaching a $10 billion of loan on a national income of 14 billion. 10 billion on a 14 billion. I would like to really know what kind of, as an investor, as a businessman, as a Bahraini businessman, what am I looking for in the 2016? Thank you.
That's the kind of question you have to earn your dinner for.
I think if I answer that question, we won't have time for any other questions. But I'd rather please Yusuf than make you guys hungry. So, first of all, I'm not the first minister that comes from a business family. There have been others before me, so that's a fact. And I wouldn't say the government doesn't have a plan how to tackle 2016. We do have a plan, and the plan has more than one core competence areas. Growing the economy and diversifying the economy is definitely a pillar of that plan. And that's where we work very diligently with the help of the EDB, with Tamkeen. This is why we went about reforming regulation in the industrial sector, in the business registration sector, incorporation of companies, in the tourism sector as well. And we did that, I must say, in a very short time during the first half of 2015. The future is definitely challenging, no doubt about that. I'd be lying to myself and to you if I said it's a rosy picture. But the good thing is that we have infrastructure projects that are committed to and coming in the pipeline, which is $20 to $30 billion. So that will keep money flowing in the economy. The other good thing is that we're a small economy, so the impact is not as devastating as bigger countries around us because of oil. And frankly, we don't produce a lot of oil. So yes, there is a drop of 92%, like you said, or 90% or 60%, but it's not, we don't make millions of barrels every day. So we have to look at things in perspective. I'm going to reverse the question to you. It's about time that we see the private sector putting its hand with the government. And it's about time that we see the private sector taking serious responsibility into building this economy. Because for the last 50, 60 years, this economy was built, supported, and nurtured by government. And the day government stopped spending, the private sector started crying. Why are they taking their capital outside of Bahrain? If they don't believe in Bahrain, let them give up the Bahraini citizenship and go find another place. Because what they are doing is like you having a fire in your house, and the first thing you do, you run for your skin and leave your family behind. If you are willing to live such a life, you're not worthy of government support. So this is a challenge that needs everybody to chip in. Government will do its part. The private sector has to do its part. It's a time of sacrifice. It's a time of rebuilding. It's not a time to say, it's a time to forget differences. It's not a time to pick on weaknesses and shortcomings. It's a time to consolidate all our efforts, literally all our efforts, not only in the business sector, everything. Everybody needs to chip in and weather the storm. It's not going to last forever. We know that economies go through cycles. And I think if we do it right, we will emerge a stronger economy at the end of the cycle. One effort we're doing at the ministry is trying to encourage and build up the SME and entrepreneurial side of business. We believe that the small and medium enterprises in Bahrain is very small in terms of a sector. Entrepreneurship is also very limited, and we want to encourage both aspects and build them, because we believe that the bigger the slice of the economy, of the business sectors at least, the SMEs becomes, the more stability we have in the economy. And it is the feeder from the SME that will grow one day, hopefully, to bigger companies and to even publicly, to companies that go to the public market on the stock exchange. Change Bahrain from a consumer society to a productive society? Yes, I absolutely agree with you. And this is one of the main forces why we pushed ahead quickly to change industrial land law. Because industrial land, and I'm sure Mr. Al-Ramaihi from the EDB will face the biggest challenge when they go promoting Bahrain to the outside world. They're not short of coming up with joint ventures or projects, but the projects tend to hit a wall because we don't have land to provide for them. And why we don't have land? Because there have been others who've kept this land for years and years without developing it. This is why we pushed fast ahead with the reform in the industrial land law, because the government subsidized this land so we can create industry, job opportunity, and export value. And this is something we want to do. One more aspect we're focusing on in Bahrain is to encourage the young population to be job providers rather than job seekers. We want to push them into the business world. We want to give them a chance to start their businesses. We want to give them a platform to try. And if fail, we want to help them again to stand up. We don't have a clear bankruptcy law in Bahrain, and this is something we're working on now, to build up a clear bankruptcy law, because we feel that in the lack of a clear bankruptcy law, it's a big deterrent for people to take risks and start their businesses. Society has a big role to play in that, because in our culture, failure is unforgiven. So people fear to step into the unknown because they don't want to be treated as an outcast. And they don't want to be branded as a failure. But we need to change that, and that may take time to change, that it's okay to fail once, try again until you get it right. I met Jack Ma earlier in China with Khalid, and he said to me that he applied to Harvard 6 times and they declined him 6 times. And today Harvard called him to come and give lectures in Harvard, and he turned them down. So fortunes can change. Have I answered you, or is there anything? Thank you.
I'll take one more question from Dr. Habil Khorakiwala.
Yes.
His Excellency, I must say this is my first visit to Bahrain.
Okay.
And
Don't let Yusuf scare you away. It's a nice place. You can come again. We'll all be here in 16 and 17.
I'm just looking for some comfort there. No, I must say that I have been quite impressed by your presentation, and doing the level of your thinking and modern approach to doing business. Now, we are a pharmaceutical healthcare company which is global. Mm-hmm. And one is looking at opportunities on establishing base in other countries also. So I would like to know from you that how does Bahrain would compare to establish a manufacturing base here compared to Dubai?
How do we compare to Dubai?
Yes, what would be the advantages one would seek, both in terms of the ecosystem plus other areas? Because see, Dubai is very well known. Everybody looks at Dubai.
You know, I would have answered you differently a year ago, because I was a private citizen and I could say whatever I wanted to say. But now I have to be really careful about what I say. But I'll still answer.
I think we live in a competitive world, so I'm sure you must be.
Well, I can give you an answer now and an answer later.
Private sector earlier.
No, okay, fair question. I mean, no doubt, Dubai has established itself as a global player, and hats off to what they have achieved over the last decades. A lot of people see Dubai as it is today. They have not seen it 30, 40 years ago. Some of us have, and you can see the remarkable change that has taken place. But I will give you arguments we used to use as a business family when we attracted joint ventures with foreign investment in Bahrain. First of all, it depends what product you're selling. If you are, let's say, for example, in the aluminum sector, then Bahrain gives you a great platform because Alba's here. Alba's going through an expansion. They struck a deal with Noga recently, and inshallah, soon we will start the Potline 6, and they'll be the largest smelter in the world. So you have a base there. You have support of aluminium industry, not just the raw metal, but you have the engineers, you have the technicians, you have people who have 45 years experience or more in the aluminum sector. If you are looking at a logistics opportunity, that's something the EDB has been working very hard, and it's a core focus for the EDB, is we are closest to the Saudi market, which is by far the largest in terms of population and in terms of spending. We are a great platform to serve the north of the Gulf, so Kuwait as well. And we have good network of infrastructure that we can accommodate these. If you look at it from a financial perspective, the cost of setting up in Bahrain is far less than the cost of setting up in Dubai, whether it's on a business overhead or whether even on a personal expense like cost of living or schooling or even groceries. I think our biggest asset in Bahrain, which we don't promote enough of, is our human capital. We have the Bahrainis who are highly educated, highly skilled, highly disciplined, motivated. And for me, as an investor, if I want to set up in any country in the world, I would look for that stability in the workforce that will give me continuity and growth. We have invested as a family outside of Bahrain, and we always go to markets that provide that experience. There's no sense of coming here, setting up and importing all your labor. Yes, you can get some of them, but you have to have the majority of the team who are local. You don't have a large number of turnover and staff. And I think that Bahrain can distinguish itself not only from Dubai, but from all the countries in the region. I had the honor of meeting Lee Kuan Yew in 2007, and I asked him, how can Bahrain distinguish itself from the other GCC countries? And his first response was, focus on your people. That's your asset, build it up, and that's what Singapore has done. And I think you will find, if you operate in Bahrain, great people to work with, great people to socialize with, and you will soon have a family in Bahrain. I don't mean a second wife, I mean another family. So I think that's the closeness to the Saudi market, the cost of operation, and the local human capital that we have in Bahrain.
Thank you. I'll take one last question from Atul Punj.
We'll take two.
Oh, sorry. You have 5 minutes more? Yeah. Okay.
Good evening, Your Excellency. Yes, moving out of Bahrain for a moment, I personally have been traveling to this region now since 1976 when I came as a student. I've seen the changes that have been happening in this part of the world. I think what worries me most about the region, and not Bahrain in particular, is that most of these societies post-OPEC have become entitlement societies. Like was mentioned earlier by one of the people present here, that there's too much expected from the government all the time, very little is expected from the people to the government. What is being done to fundamentally change that going forward, to actually make people productive in the real sense, believe in pride of work, whatever level of, like in Saudi Arabia, I know my own personal experiences are, a lot of people are choosing to stay unemployed because they do not feel the need to actually go out and do a job that they feel is below their station. So the fundamental societal change, I believe, is critical to start being engineered because it takes 2-3 generations for it to kick in. So are governments really addressing this issue going forward?
Thanks.
I think there's no one magical solution or one magical cure to this. The problem starts really in the upbringing in the homes. It's a culture thing. The culture has to change. if you look at generations, my parents or before that, we didn't have, or they didn't have that luxury in life, so they were forced to do, to live the hard life and to survive one way or another. My father started his business in Baghdad. My uncle started in India, and then they came to set up in Bahrain. One of the fallacies we have today is that we try too much to protect Bahrainis by forcing them to work in Bahrain, or we make it more like a barrier to entry. Why? Why shouldn't we have Bahrainis working around the world? Why shouldn't we have Bahrainis, top bankers in New York, in London, in Singapore? Why shouldn't we have Bahrainis in the rest of the Gulf? Yes, there is a lot of protectionism given, and that kind of spoils people. I think what we need to do is change educational curriculums to be more forward-looking, more technology involved, more at least English, if not more other languages as well. There has to be a structural change in society to allow the children to express what they want to do in life, whether it's not in Bahrain, they do it somewhere else. And sooner or later, we're going to have to rely on ourselves, because governments, and not only Bahrain, all governments in the region, cannot continue to subsidize and to false employ citizens just to give them the security of employment. There will come a time where governments will run out of funding and alternatives would have to be found. I was in Kuwait on Wednesday in a GCC industrial conference, and they were talking about that. And this is why we're trying to educate people in the ministry to be more business owners, to take risk, to start adventuring more, to start employing people rather than just being content with being an employee themselves. And bits and pieces in all these areas would help. It will not change, probably not even in a generation. It may take 2 or 3 generations to change. But the reality is harsh, and it's coming quick, and we have to adapt to it.
I'll just take 2 more questions. One from Mr. Javed Jabbar, former Minister of Pakistan, Minister for Information in Pakistan.
Thank you, Dr. Zayed. Minister for Disinformation, as much as for information. But Minister, I've really enjoyed listening to you. You've been so candid. As a very narrow-minded, parochial Pakistani, I would like to invite your comments on the role of migrant people from South Asia and West Asia into Bahrain, and whether you see this as an unhealthily, excessively dependent factor for Bahrain because of the sheer disproportion between populations, and whether you see this role as being potentially helpful or potentially destabilizing, because how do you see it over the next 10 to 15 years? And is this a permanent, enduring factor, or do you think that this can be contributive to future stability, given the regional security situation? Thank you.
Thank you. I mean, we're an open society, so we don't discriminate on nationality or religion or sex or whatever. And I think one of the privileges I've had growing up in Bahrain is from childhood I've been accustomed to dealing with different nationalities and different backgrounds. 2 weeks ago, or maybe 3 weeks ago, most of us in this room, Bahrainis, visited Indian families to celebrate Diwali with them, and this is something we grew up culturally. In Eid, they come and visit us. In Christmas, we visit the expatriate community. So I don't see it as a clear cut between healthy or unhealthy. In every community, you'll have good experiences, you'll have bad experiences. We certainly have benefited economically and culturally by having different nationalities in Bahrain, whether it's Asia or Europe or any other part of the world. I don't think, in my opinion, that it was harming to Bahrain or the society of Bahrain. I don't see it as a destabilizing factor. What I see is there is more pressure to employ locals, so these locals will compete for these jobs, and whether they don't, sooner or later, they will have to do all kind of work that is available in the economy, and they'll probably compete with the migrant Asian community here. But I don't want it to sound like it's going to be a friction point. I don't think so. We've lived and coexisted with them for many years. We have a Hindu temple in Bahrain that just celebrated 200 years of existence. We are refurbishing the old Manama Souk, and part of it is going to be hopefully a little India in there, and the Indian community have joined us and even to express willingness to even fund the project. So I think we have a harmonious society, and it adds flavor by having different people from different places. I don't think it kind of splits it up. To the contrary, it brings it together.
I'll take the last word with the lady here. I think
the lady happens to be my sister, by the way. Well, that's unfair because she knows a lot about me.
Don't worry, Zayed. I will not do anything that will put you in embarrassment, بالعكس. First of all, Assalamu alaikum. I would like to welcome you to Bahrain. I would like to thank Your Excellency for your speech. It was excellent, and I would like to assure you, being a member of the Chamber of Commerce, that we in Bahrain are very confident of our country. We have plans for 2016, 2017. God willing, we will continue, and our children after us.
Sure.
When we come through hard times, we also have to think of ways how to go around it, to think out of the box, and work harder. What question I have to you, as Your Excellency, is regarding the private-public partnership. This is what we need to do more. We'd like to know, as the private sector, how much more can we contribute? How can we work with the government to come out of this situation, or to overcome the situation? We are confident that we can do it together. So I'd like to hear more of the government plans on private-public partnership, and also on certain companies where there will be privatization, and offering this on the bourse, so the private sector and the people of Bahrain can benefit from this wealth. And as we in companies, when we go and put our company, put an IPO, we look for capital. And maybe the government now, it's the time to think this way. And we have seen incidents with Sukuk, it was very successful. With the SIF, it was very successful. So this is an opportunity. This is a silver lining for the cloud that we are going through. I'd like to hear your points regarding these solutions that are out of the box, different than what we did before, and ways to reduce the debt that the government in by engaging the private sector and distributing the wealth, which could be a key element in activating and acting as a catalyst to the economy. Thank you very much.
Thank you. See? Now you got me into trouble. What can the private sector do? Anything they want. Why are you waiting for government to tell you do this or that or work in this direction? You should spearhead that motivation and take it. Take it from the Chamber of Commerce, take it from your private businesses. I must say that the Chamber of Commerce has not shown any good initiatives yet. They are sitting on loads of cash. They are too slow in their decisions. They don't have the bureaucracy we have in government. They don't have the conformity we have to go through in taking a government decision. Yet we find ourselves, we, the EDB, Temkeen, moving much faster than the Chamber of Commerce. I wonder why. Maybe the Chamber of Commerce needs to pick up the pace if they want to be a true partner in changing the economy of Bahrain, because right now I think they are lagging behind. Nevertheless, you don't have to wait for the Chamber of Commerce to do something. You can do it on your own, you can do it with a couple of others, you can form your own company, you want to list a company, you can do that. The bourse is not active because there hasn't been any new companies listed. It's not under my domain yet, but I think there's a lot more to be done there. There's no trading, there's very thin trading, and I think the last company that was listed was 4 or 5 years ago. So you can hardly call it a bourse when there is no activity on it. Again, the private sector needs to take the lead. They need to get started, and they need to do what they used to do in the 60s and 70s by taking risks, by setting up companies on their own, by being entrepreneurial, by going beyond the boundaries of Bahrain. One of the frustrations I face today with people who have establishment in Bahrain is that they think of Bahrain between Muharraq and Manama. And, you know, sometimes I want to scream. I say, we have an FTA with America. It's the largest market in the world. Why are you wasting your time struggling here? Look abroad. Try to open up markets there. We have an FTA with Singapore. Use it. Try to go to the GCC. They all want to stay here. No, we're happy where we are. I think it takes a drive from the person. The government cannot push you. You can take a horse to the water, but you can't force it to drink. If you don't have the initiative within you, whether as individuals or as a business sector or the BCCI, then don't expect government to change that. Something has to stem from the business community. And frankly, I am waiting patiently for that to move, because Khalid knows and we'd like to move, but maybe with your voice in BCCI we can. في مشاريع يعني there are projects whether it's in the construction of housing, whether it is in the electricity production, there are projects there ongoing, and this is something that the government is pursuing. It's done it in the past and they will do it in the future. But again, why wait for the government to come up with a project and then you step in? You come with the initiative and you propose it to government. Yeah?
Sorry, Yusuf Bhai.
Yusuf, you get one question free, every other question is... Yeah.
Don't give him the mic.
Huh?
Don't
make
give
a
him the
very
mic.
rosy picture, you know.
I make a rosy picture?
Yes.
That's my job.
Yeah, well, and I appreciate it. I appreciate it very, very much. But you asked the private sector to have the initiatives. We need the ground to
You
walk
need what?
on. We need the ground to walk on. We need taking out all this red tapes. We need all the legislations to be available for the private sector. We need privatization to be ready for public sector, for private sector.
They need food.
And this is not available. Whatever is there.
No.
This is
Please,
not available.
No, I will not accept this. I will not accept it because we have a growing economy. We are not a fully industrialized economy, but I think it's unfair to say that we don't have any grounds for success in Bahrain. There's a lot of successful stories in Bahrain, whether it is in industry or in business or even in innovation. We have companies here that have taken the initiative and have grown beyond the markets of Bahrain, and they've become leaders in what they do. It's very easy to say we don't have, and we can always wish to have everything. You will never have everything. But what you have is a good platform to start, and what you need to have is the will to start. If you're panicking about the economy collapsing and you're more interested in taking your money outside of Bahrain, we have a very open capitalistic market system. You can transfer any funds you want today. We're not going to block you. If you have confidence in this country, we will stand behind you and we will help you. But don't send a negative message. I think I may be rosy, but you are gloomy.
You know, Your Excellency, I think many of my friends from Delhi will agree with me that they would not be sure whether they were in Bahrain this evening or in Delhi this evening, given the kind of interaction between private business and government. We hear it all the time. Business anywhere in the world is unhappy with what governments do, and I truly appreciate your candid response and your willingness to take these questions. I think the one message for those of you who have come here for the first time is that Bahrain is a free society. You've seen a very free interaction between a business leader, my friend Yusuf, and the minister. And I think that is very encouraging for any investor or any businessman. I will finally say once again, thank you so much. I think all the good things I heard about you were proved. I was not exaggerating when I said all those things about you. I just want to say a word of thanks to 4 individuals who made an enormous difference to the geoeconomics program here in Bahrain. I want to mention my friend Sheikh Mohammed bin Issa Al Khalifa, who's unfortunately not able to join us this evening. Mr. Kamal Ahmed, the former CEO of EDB, my friend Khalid Al Rumahi, and Rania Al Shirawi, 4 of whom have made the geoeconomics program a great success and have made the Bahrain Bay Forum also a success. And thanks to each of those 4, the IISS has gone from strength to strength here in Bahrain. And thank you very much once again for joining us this evening. Thank you.